Question my formulations again, and you'll see what happens to people who overstep. The entire lab went silent. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me, then quickly away. My boss, Grayson, glared at me from across our circular workbench, nostrils flaring, jaw tightened into a rigid line. The small vial I'd just questioned sat between us, a synthetic compound he'd personally approved, despite my concerns about its stability in prolonged exposure scenarios. I'm only suggesting additional testing before we commit to production, I said, keeping my voice steady. The preliminary data shows potential irritation responses after. Enough. He cut me off with a single word that seemed to suck all the oxygen from our laboratory. I've been developing scent profiles for 15 years. You think you know better than me because you created one successful, immersive experience? Heat crawled up my neck. It wasn't just one success. My atmospheric scent designs had revolutionized how people experienced virtual environments. My work on the ocean biome had won international recognition. But before I could speak, Grayson turned to address the entire team. Since Willow seems to believe her judgment supersedes mine, I think she needs a reminder of her place here. His smile didn't reach his eyes. 100 days. For 100 days, I want everyone in this department to help Willow understand the consequences of questioning leadership. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Make her regret ever challenging me, he continued, voice dropping to something intimate and terrifying. No promotions, no projects, no respect. Let's see if her precious nose is still so confident after that. The silence that followed felt like drowning. I stood frozen, watching my career disintegrate before my eyes. 3 years of groundbreaking work, erased with a single command. Starting now, Grayson added, turning back to me. And Willow, I suggest you use these 100 days to consider your future. Not everyone is built for innovation. Perhaps quality control would better suit your cautious nature. That night, I sat alone on my apartment balcony, staring at the city lights without seeing them. My hands trembled as I lifted a glass of wine to my lips. I'd built my entire identity around my sensory abilities, my capacity to create scent profiles that transported people to different worlds, different emotions. Now, Grayson had weaponized the entire department against me. I knew I should quit. Any reasonable person would. But deep inside, a stubborn voice whispered that leaving would only prove him right. I hadn't built my career by backing down from challenges, but how could I survive 100 days of systematic torment? And what would be left of me, of my reputation, when those days were over? Little did I know that day one was only the beginning of a nightmare that would either break me completely or transform me into someone Grayson would never see coming. Before we continue this journey together, I want to thank you for tuning in to this story. If you're feeling the tension already, please hit that like button to let me know you're with me. Drop a comment sharing a time when you faced workplace bullying. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. And if you want more stories about workplace justice, subscribe now so you don't miss what happens next. Because trust me, what's coming will make your jaw drop. My name is Willow Alder, and until 36 hours ago, I was the rising star at Sensory Dimensions, the world's leading atmospheric experience design company. At 32, I'd already revolutionized how people experienced virtual environments through scent. Where most developers focused on recreating obvious aromas, pine forests, ocean spray, fresh-baked cookies, I specialized in emotional undertones, the subtle scents that trigger nostalgia, anticipation, wonder. My gift wasn't just my sensitive nose. It was understanding how scents affected psychology. This talent had fast-tracked my career until I caught Grayson's attention. He'd personally selected me for his elite development team 3 years ago. Your potential is limitless, he'd told me then. I'll make you extraordinary. For 2 years, he had been my mentor, my champion, until I started outshining him. It began subtly, clients requesting me specifically, industry publications featuring my innovations, the CEO mentioning my name in quarterly meetings. Grayson's praise became more measured, his feedback more cutting. Still, I never imagined it would come to this. Day one of my punishment began with returning to my workstation to find all my samples relabeled. Every carefully calibrated compound, every prototype, all with switched labels or no labels at all. Months of work, now requiring each vial to be individually tested and identified. "Oh no," said Brielle, watching me survey the damage with wide, innocent eyes. "How terrible. Perhaps housekeeping got overzealous? We both knew housekeeping never touched lab samples. We both knew she had early access to the lab that morning. "I'll help you reorganize," she offered with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's kind, but I'll manage," I replied, already calculating the hours this would cost me. By day 7, my projects had been reassigned. "Temporary," my team lead assured me, "just until you get reorganized." By day 14, my access to the primary testing chambers had been restricted. "System glitch," IT claimed. "We'll look into it." Day 21. My workspace was relocated next to the chemical storage area, where constant olfactory interference made precision work nearly impossible. Space optimization. According to management, I documented everything. Each night I returned home with burning eyes and a dulled sense of smell from the constant exposure to interfering compounds. Each morning I returned, determined to outlast whatever came next. On day 33, I overheard 2 junior developers in the restroom. "How much longer do we have to mess with her work?" one asked. "Until she quits. Grayson's orders," the other replied. "Though between us, she's holding up better than I expected." "It's almost impressive," the first admitted. "Shame about her career, though." I locked myself in a stall until they left, pressing my fist against my mouth to stay silent. Their casual cruelty stung worse than Grayson's calculated attacks. These were people who'd once asked for my guidance, celebrated my successes. That night, I nearly drafted my resignation letter. My finger hovered over the send button for a full hour before I deleted the draft. Quitting would mean Grayson won. More than that, it would mean abandoning the work that gave my life meaning. Instead, I made a decision. If I couldn't access the main lab resources, I would create my own. I converted my apartment's spare bedroom into a makeshift testing space, ordering personal equipment with my savings. Nothing as sophisticated as our lab technology, but enough to conduct basic safety analyses, because something about that compound Grayson was pushing still troubled me. The preliminary irritation responses I'd noted weren't being properly addressed in the safety protocols. And our next major project, an underwater immersive experience where visitors would be surrounded by these scents for hours, was proceeding without adequate testing. Day 45 marked a turning point. I arrived to find someone had contaminated my personal scent library, tiny vials containing pure essences that every developer accumulated over their career, each contaminated with interfering compounds, rendering them useless. This collection had taken years to build, with some rare compounds nearly impossible to replace. I stood there, hand trembling as I held a ruined vial of Hinoki cypress extract I'd sourced directly from Japan. Something inside me shifted. The hurt calcified into something harder, colder, more focused. That evening, I didn't cry. Instead, I pulled out my personal testing notebooks and began reviewing everything I knew about Grayson's disputed compound. If he was willing to destroy irreplaceable materials over a professional disagreement, what else might he be willing to sacrifice? The safety of our consumers? The company's reputation? I needed to understand what I was really fighting against, and why this particular formula was worth destroying a colleague's career to protect. What I discovered in the following weeks would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone who had followed Grayson's orders to break me. The punishment they thought would silence me had instead given me the one thing I needed most, the motivation to look deeper than anyone had before. And what I found hidden in those molecular structures would make day 99 a day Grayson would never forget. Day 52 arrived with a new form of torment. The team was finalizing concepts for the underwater immersive experience, our company's most ambitious project to date. During the planning meeting, I raised my hand to contribute. "I have some thoughts about balancing the marine salinity notes with—" "Actually," Grayson interrupted smoothly, "we won't need Willow's input on sensory profiles for this project. She'll be handling—" He paused, consulting his tablet with exaggerated thoughtfulness. "Equipment sanitation protocols." The message was clear. From scent architect to glorified equipment cleaner, several colleagues avoided my eyes. Others exchanged small smiles. "Unless you feel that's beneath your considerable talents," Grayson added, eyebrow raised in challenge. "I'm happy to contribute however needed," I replied evenly, though my pulse hammered in my ears. After the meeting, Renata, a newer developer I'd mentored last year, approached my isolated workstation. She glanced around nervously before speaking. "This is wrong. What's happening to you?" she whispered. "But I can't. My contract is up for renewal next month and—" "It's okay," I said, meaning it. Self-preservation isn't selfish. It's necessary. He's using your specialized analysis equipment for final testing tomorrow, she added quickly. Thought you should know. That equipment, designed to measure how scent compounds change and interact over extended exposure periods, was essential for safety verification. If Grayson was using it for final testing, the project was moving to production phase. That night in my makeshift home lab, I studied my crude analyses of samples I'd managed to obtain. The compound showed clear signs of molecular destabilization after prolonged heat exposure, exactly the conditions created by body heat in an enclosed, immersive environment. The irritation responses weren't severe enough to cause lasting harm, but the discomfort would be significant, ruining the experience and potentially creating liability issues. Why would Grayson push forward with a flawed compound? He was too experienced not to recognize these patterns. The answer came on day 67. I was working late, cataloging cleaned equipment in the supply room, my new assigned role, when I heard Grayson's voice from his private office nearby. His door was slightly ajar. Yes, we're proceeding with the original formula, he was saying. The stability concerns are exaggerated. No, I've handled it. The cost difference is substantial, and the board won't notice the substitution. Yes, I understand the timing is crucial for my bonus structure. I froze, dust cloth in hand. Substitution? Bonus structure? I eased closer to the door, careful to stay out of sight. The alternative compound would require delaying the launch by at least 6 weeks for proper testing, he continued. And with the fiscal year ending next month, that would push my performance bonus into next year's evaluation period. I'm not waiting another year. My mind raced. Grayson was deliberately using an inferior compound to avoid project delays that would impact his annual bonus. He was putting profit before safety and silencing anyone who questioned him. I slipped away before he could discover me, heart pounding. This wasn't just about professional rivalry. This was about ethics, consumer safety, and corporate integrity. The next morning, I arrived to find my access badge deactivated. Security made me wait in the lobby while they sorted out the system error. 45 minutes later, I was allowed entry, too late for the morning testing session I'd planned to observe. By day 74, the isolation had become nearly complete. Conversations stopped when I entered rooms. Lunch invitations vanished. Even the laboratory assistants, who'd once eagerly sought my advice, now hurried past with averted eyes. Careful not to get too close, I overheard one developer stage whisper to another as I passed. Career suicide might be contagious. The loneliness was corrosive. Doubt crept in during quiet moments. Was I overreacting about the compound? Was my analysis flawed? Was I sabotaging my future over a minor technical disagreement? No. I reviewed my findings again and again. The data was clear, the risk real, and now I understood the motivation behind Grayson's insistence. On day 82, I discovered my home lab equipment had been tampered with. Someone had entered my apartment while I was at work. Nothing was stolen. Instead, my testing equipment had been subtly miscalibrated. Had I not noticed the irregular readings, I might have discounted all my previous findings as erroneous. The violation of my home shook me deeply. This had escalated beyond professional sabotage to personal intimidation. That night, I moved my equipment to my closest friend's garage, installed new locks, and added security cameras to my apartment. You need to report this, my friend urged. This is breaking and entering. And say what? That I'm conducting unauthorized testing of proprietary compounds in my home? That would end any chance of salvaging my career. Is your career worth more than your safety? I had no answer. But I did have 28 days left of my punishment, and I wouldn't be intimidated into quitting now. Day 89. Production samples of the underwater immersion scent profile were distributed to the team. Everyone received the standard white envelope with testing strips. Everyone except me. I watched as my colleagues inhaled the various components, nodding with approval at Grayson's work. Remarkable depth to the coral reef sequence, someone commented. The transition between open ocean and deep-sea thermal vents is seamless, added another. I sat silently, excluded from the one aspect of my job I truly loved. Later, I found an unmarked envelope on my desk. Inside was a single testing strip with a handwritten note. Not everyone agrees with what's happening. Be careful. I slipped the sample into my pocket, touched by this small act of rebellion from an unknown ally. That evening, I tested the sample in my relocated lab. The results confirmed my suspicions. The compound showed clear degradation patterns after simulated extended exposure. The irritation wouldn't be apparent in a quick test sniff, but would develop gradually during the 2-hour immersive experience, building to significant discomfort. By day 95, promotional materials for the underwater experience were everywhere. Advance tickets had sold out within hours. The company stock had jumped 12% on projected revenue, and Grayson was being hailed as a visionary for creating a multi-sensory experience that would transform the industry. I watched from my isolated corner, continuing my equipment sanitation duties while finalizing my own comprehensive analysis. Every night, I added to my documentation, building an irrefutable case about the compound's flaws and the safety risks they presented. On day 97, I overheard a conversation between Grayson and our legal counsel in the hallway. The liability waiver covers all sensory aspects of the experience, the lawyer was saying. Standard language about potential mild discomfort. Perfect, Grayson replied. And the advance ticket sales are non-refundable, regardless of participant experience. Correct, though I should note that persistent complaints could trigger regulatory attention, especially if there's a pattern of identical symptoms. By then, we'll have the revenue secured and can develop a modified formula for subsequent runs. The initial complaints can be dismissed as psychosomatic or individual sensitivity variations. I stood motionless around the corner, a sick feeling spreading through my stomach. He absolutely knew there were issues, and was proceeding anyway, gambling that the financial gains would outweigh potential backlash. That night, I made my final decision. I would not allow thousands of people to be used as unwitting guinea pigs for a flawed product, especially not to secure one man's bonus. Day 98, I finalized my documentation and made 3 identical copies. I stored one in my friend's safe, emailed one to my personal account with detailed instructions, and placed the third in a simple cream-colored folder. I barely slept that night, rehearsing what I would say, anticipating his reactions, planning my responses. By morning, a strange calm had settled over me. The fear and hurt of the past 98 days had crystallized into something harder, determination. Day 99 dawned bright and clear. I dressed with unusual care, a deep blue dress that had once been my favorite, before professional sabotage made fashion choices seem trivial. I applied minimal makeup, tied my hair back neatly, and added a single piece of jewelry, a small silver pendant shaped like a nose that a colleague had given me years ago, as a humorous nod to my sensory gifts. I arrived at the office exactly on time, the folder tucked neatly in my bag. The launch party for the underwater experience was scheduled for the following day, day 100 of my punishment, a coincidence that felt almost poetic. As I passed through the laboratory, conversations hushed. Several people watched me with confused expressions, perhaps surprised I hadn't quit yet, perhaps wondering what new humiliation awaited on this final day. Instead of going to my relegated workspace near the storage area, I walked directly toward Grayson's office. His assistant started to intercept me. He's in a meeting and can't be disturbed. I smiled politely and continued walking. For the first time in 99 days, I felt a flicker of something like power returning. "You can't just," she began, half rising from her chair. I opened Grayson's office door without knocking. He looked up from his desk, irritation flashing across his face before transforming into that familiar cold smugness. "Willow," he said, leaning back in his chair, "come to concede defeat one day early? How considerate." I closed the door behind me and stepped forward. "Actually," I replied, my voice steadier than I'd expected, "I've come to discuss the underwater immersion experience. Specifically, the compound that started all of this." He sighed theatrically. "Still fixated on that? I'd hoped 99 days might have taught you something about respect for authority and expertise." "Oh, it's taught me a great deal," I said, approaching his desk. "About authority, about expertise, and especially about you, Grayson." I placed the cream-colored folder on his desk. "What's this?" he asked, not touching it. "Everything I've learned during my punishment," I answered. "I think you'll find it quite illuminating." Grayson stared at the folder for a long moment before reaching for it with visible reluctance. His confidence wavered slightly as he flipped it open, eyes scanning the first page. "What exactly am I looking at?" he asked, but the slight tremor in his voice suggested he already knew. Page 1 is my original analysis of your compound, showing the molecular destabilization patterns after prolonged heat exposure, I explained calmly. The kind of exposure that would occur in an enclosed immersive space with participants' body heat accelerating the degradation. He flipped to the next page, his jaw tightening. You conducted unauthorized testing? With company property? No company property involved, I corrected. I used my own equipment, purchased with my personal funds. Nothing there violates my non-disclosure agreement. His face darkened as he continued turning pages. This means nothing. One person's amateur analysis against a full development team. Page 12, I interrupted. You'll find independent verification from ChemSense Analytics. They confirmed my findings about irritation responses after prolonged exposure. His head snapped up. You sent proprietary formulations to an outside lab? That's grounds for immediate termination. I sent them a neutralized variant that revealed the structural properties without disclosing proprietary elements, I replied. Their assessment was blind. They had no idea which company it came from. Completely legal under whistleblower protection statutes. Sweat beaded on his upper lip as he continued reading. The color gradually drained from his face when he reached the final section. Where did you get these? He whispered, fingers trembling slightly as he touched the printed conversation transcripts. From your communications with the supplier. Apparently, when you redirected my workstation access, you accidentally gave me partial admin privileges to the vendor management system. An oversight, I'm sure. The transcripts detailed Grayson's deliberate substitution of a cheaper, less stable compound to maintain his profit margins and secure his performance bonus, despite supplier warnings about potential stability issues in prolonged exposure scenarios. You've been gathering this for how long? He asked, voice hollow. 99 days, I replied quietly. You gave me nothing but time to investigate when you removed my projects and isolated me. Every day of punishment was another day to build this case. He closed the folder and attempted to regain his composure. No one will believe you over me. I've been here for 15 years. You're just a disgruntled employee lashing out because you couldn't handle constructive criticism. I smiled slightly. That would be a compelling narrative, if not for two things. I reached into my bag and removed a small recording device. First, I recorded our conversation just now, where you implicitly acknowledged the validity of these findings. His eyes widened. That's illegal, not in this state. Single-party consent is all that's required, I explained. And second, I've already submitted this entire report to 3 people who will take immediate action if necessary. Who? He demanded, voice rising. The head of Consumer Safety Regulation, who happens to be an old colleague from graduate school. Our company's insurance underwriter, who would be liable for any claims resulting from adverse reactions. And finally, I paused, our CEO, who I believe would be interested to know why her most anticipated product launch might generate thousands of consumer complaints instead of rave reviews. Grayson's face contorted through a series of emotions, shock, rage, fear, before settling into calculated assessment. What do you want? He asked finally. Money? A promotion? Your own development team? I want you to do the right thing, I answered simply. Delay the launch. Reformulate with the stable compound variant I've outlined on page 37. Run proper testing. Then release a product that won't harm people. He laughed bitterly. You don't understand what you're asking. Delaying means missing this quarter's financial targets. The board would prefer a slight delay to a PR disaster and potential class action lawsuit, I countered. Especially when they learn why you chose to proceed despite known safety concerns. Grayson's intercom buzzed before he could respond. He hesitated, then pressed the button. What is it? He snapped. Sir, the CEO and legal counsel are requesting your immediate presence in the main conference room, his assistant's voice replied. They said it's regarding tomorrow's launch, and they specifically asked for Willow to join as well. The look he gave me contained pure venom. You went to them already? This meeting was just... What? A courtesy? I sent the report this morning, I confirmed. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Professional courtesy, you might call it. As we walked to the conference room, the laboratory fell silent, all eyes following our progress. The whispers started immediately behind us. After 99 days of being treated like I was invisible, suddenly I was the only thing anyone could see. The conference room door stood open. Inside waited our CEO, Helena, along with the legal counsel and 2 board members. Their expressions were grave. Grayson, Willow, please sit, Helena said, gesturing to the empty chairs. We've been reviewing some concerning information regarding tomorrow's launch. Grayson immediately launched into defense mode. Whatever allegations have been made, I can assure you, we've already verified the central claims, Helena interrupted sharply. The compound substitution, the stability issues, the potential consumer reactions. The insurance company has already informed us they won't cover liability claims if we proceed with the current formulation. One of the board members, an elderly woman with piercing eyes, leaned forward. What we need to determine now is whether this was negligence or deliberate cost-cutting without proper risk assessment. Grayson's shoulders sagged slightly, the first sign of defeat I'd seen in 99 days. I believed the reaction risks were minimal, he began, but his voice lacked conviction. Your emails to the supplier suggest otherwise, the legal counsel noted, tapping a tablet in front of him, as do your instructions to silence concerns raised by your development team. Helena turned to me. Willow, the board is impressed with your thorough analysis and alternative formulation proposal, especially considering the challenging work environment you've endured while compiling it. Challenging is one way to describe it, I replied carefully. We'd like you to lead the reformulation team, she continued. With appropriate resources and authority, the launch will be delayed 6 weeks for proper testing, but we believe your alternative compound will solve the stability issues without compromising the sensory experience. I felt a weight lifting that I hadn't realized I'd been carrying for 99 days. I'd be honored. As for you, Grayson, Helena continued, turning to my former boss, we'll need to discuss your future with the company after a comprehensive review of your management practices. In the meantime, you're suspended pending investigation. His face went ashen. You can't. I've given 15 years to this company, and we've rewarded you generously for those years. The elderly board member replied coldly. But integrity isn't a sometime value. It's fundamental to everything we do. If you compromise safety for personal gain, no past contributions can offset that breach of trust. The security director appeared at the door, a silent signal that Grayson would be escorted from the building immediately. As he stood, Grayson turned to me one last time. This isn't over, he hissed, under his breath. Actually, I replied quietly, it is. Day 100. Watching him walk out with security was not the triumphant moment I'd imagined during those dark days of isolation. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of vindication, relief, and a strange kind of emptiness. The fight had defined me for so long that its sudden end left me momentarily adrift. Helena stayed behind after the others filed out. I owe you an apology, Willow. I had no idea what was happening in that department. Few people look closely at what they don't want to see, I said, without bitterness. We're implementing new reporting structures to ensure nothing like this happens again, she assured me. And your new position comes with a substantial raise and team leadership responsibilities. You'll report directly to me. As I walked back through the laboratory, former colleagues approached one by one, some apologetic, some congratulatory, some simply curious about what had happened. Renata, the developer who had slipped me the test sample, beamed at me from across the room, giving a subtle thumbs up. The department gathered for an emergency meeting that afternoon. Helena announced the launch delay, the reformulation plan, and my new leadership role. She also made it clear that the culture of intimidation was over, effective immediately. We create experiences that bring joy and wonder, she reminded everyone. We cannot do that in an environment of fear and retribution. After the meeting, Brielle, who had relabeled my samples on day 1, approached hesitantly. I want you to know, she began awkwardly. I was just following orders. I didn't realize. We all make choices, I interrupted gently. Including me. I choose to focus on building something better now rather than dwelling on what happened before. 6 weeks later, we launched the underwater immersive experience with my reformulated compound. The reviews were spectacular, with particular praise for the scent profiles that evoked emotional transportation beyond visual simulation alone. My team, comprising both new developers and former colleagues, worked in an atmosphere of collaborative respect. We displayed our successes and failures equally, learning from both. As for Grayson, the investigation revealed patterns of intimidation, extending back years. Multiple former employees came forward, with similar stories, His termination became permanent, his industry reputation permanently tarnished. Sometimes I think about those 100 days of punishment, how they were meant to break me, but instead forged something stronger. How isolation forced me to rely entirely on my own judgment. How having everything taken away clarified exactly what mattered most. I still keep that cream folder as a reminder that truth, patiently accumulated, is the most powerful force in any workplace. Not titles, not authority, but simple, verifiable truth. If you've ever faced workplace bullying or watched someone endure it, please share your story in the comments. Your experience might give someone else the courage to stand up for themselves. Hit that like button if you believe in workplace justice, and subscribe for more stories about turning adversity into advantage. Remember, sometimes our greatest challenges reveal our greatest strengths, not because suffering is good, but because surviving it shows us who we really are. Thank you for joining me on this journey from day 1 to day 100.